This episode of Genre Vision is brought to you by our premium subscribers at patreon.com/genrevision. If you become a premium subscriber for just $5 a month, you can get access to all of the bonus material we make for the Genre Vision network of shows. That includes Genre Vision, Finflix, Third Time's the Charm, and additional material that we make exclusive for Patreon. Greetings, loyal listeners and new recruits. I'm Drew Deach.
I'm Travis Newton.
And this is Genre Vision. Every week, Travis and I review and recommend horror films, action movies, fantasy flicks, sci-fi cinema, and more. And this week, we continue Alien Invasion Month 2.0 with a double feature, not a versus, of Body Snatchers from 1993 and The Puppet Masters from 1994. Before we do that, just a couple calls to action. We have to do this every once in a while, and the time has come once again, and we mean it from the bottom of our hearts. If you like what we do here on Genre Vision, please, please, please go to the Apple Podcast Store and rate and review the show.
If you've already done it, we're not asking you to do it again.
Yes.
If you are new to the show, or if you have not yet done this, this is really critical to chart position on the Apple Podcast Store, which is very important for how people discover our show. So if you do like the show, please do us the favor, go to your Apple Podcast Store on the iOS device of your choice, or on your Mac, or on your PC. Just go there, find the Genre Vision show, give us a brief rating and a review. That will help us out a whole bunch in the charts. So,
and we do say, if you go through the trouble of writing a review, we will feature it here on the show.
Damn straight.
We love hearing that stuff. So, and we've had some absolutely heartwarming reviews in the past. So thank you for everybody who has reviewed the show. And thank you to you, person who is going to go do that after you listen to this amazing episode. So let's get into our double feature. This was one I was kind of interested in because these movies both came out, a year apart from each other. They're both adaptations of a sort from literary source material. The Body Snatchers being the Jack Finney novel, which was made into two versions beforehand. And The Puppet Masters by Robert Heinlein. This is the first, and I think only, film adaptation that I know of that. And also it's very important because in 1993... The X-Files premiered. Mm-hmm. And I think this was already kind of happening in the early 90s already, but it was certainly exacerbated by The X-Files, was this reinvigoration about aliens and UFO encounters and all this kind of stuff, and secret spooky government programs that were hiding the truth about aliens from everybody. So we decided to put these two together, not as a versus, because they were both movies we hadn't seen, but more so as an act of comparison and to see in our bigger theme of Alien Invasion Month 2.0, what was the paranoia or the kind of fears that were going on at this time to make these particular stories. And we're going to start with Body Snatchers, and I think we can just say this right out the gate. Body Snatchers from 1993, directed by Abel Ferrara, who's a very controversial and very influential filmmaker, is a movie that I had always known about and had, seen kind of as a cult movie, not really a cult classic, but it had its defenders and its kind of place in the discussion somewhat. But as far as Body Snatchers movies go, if you looked at it as the Body Snatchers franchise, which they're all just remakes.
Sure.
This one never got brought up nearly as much as the original film or the Philip Kaufman version from 1978, I believe. And after watching it, which Travis and I did a synchronized watch, and again, like I said, it's our first viewing of it. After watching it, I am flabbergasted that this movie is not talked about more, because holy shit, is this good.
It is very good. I had always gotten the impression, just sort of a general impression from seeing opinions online, that this movie was okay, but not particularly good. I don't know what the fuck they were talking about, because this movie's real, real good. I think it's aged especially well. Body Snatchers and the whole idea is so simple that you can kind of remake it in umpteen gazillion different ways And you wouldn't necessarily have to say it's a direct remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers, either one of the earlier versions, or it's a new version of the original Jack Finney novel. The very concept at its core is so malleable and so workable that you could just kind of do whatever you want with it, as long as you're using, certain elements or avoiding certain elements from the original material. It's just an infinitely reconfigurable idea to have an alien invasion that takes over people's bodies, whether or not there are alien creatures visible as sentient walking alien monsters around it. You don't have to have that. You could have that if you wanted to, but the ultimate thing here is people are being taken over and sort of in effect replaced by things that look like them but are not them. It is not just an infiltration of our country, but an infiltration of our very minds and bodies, an infiltration of our ethics, an infiltration of our societal structures globally. So that is the source of the horror in all these different stories, whether it be the Puppet Masters written by Heinlein or the Body Snatchers written by Jack Finney. It's all the same idea.
Well, and what's interesting as far as Body Snatchers as a franchise goes, and this particular entry, is that each one has attempted to reflect some very specific type of fear. And there has been a lot of academic discussion, particularly about the original film, and how it has been read both as a fear of the infiltration of communism into American society in the 50s, and also as a satire of that feeling and a fear of McCarthyism and this kind of persecution. And Travis and I had a similar experience while we were watching Body Snatchers, in which we were walking away with two very polar reads on the movie.
Actually, I disagree. I don't even think our reads were all that polar opposite, because there's a whole bunch of stuff you and I agree on as far as the reads, but I think you and I disagree on what the bugbear is in the movie, who the other is, who the invader is.
Yes.
And what the allegory of the story is, because that shapes what the allegory is. And this is a very allegorical story. It's a big metaphor.
Yes. So this particular take, unlike the previous versions, is actually a lot smaller in scale. This all takes place in this community that is on an army base.
Yeah.
And there is this kind of manufactured suburb community where the families of the army personnel can live and have a community and everything. But they are all under the watchful eye of the U.S. Army. And as soon as the movie starts off, we're introduced to who is going to end up being our lead character. Her name is Marty, played by Gabrielle Anwar. And she's moving to this base with her dad, who is, I believe he works for either the EPA or the CDC or something, basically a scientific outlet of the government. And they're being moved to this army base. They also have their pretty, I believe, recent stepmother, who's played by Meg Tilly. Her name's Carol. And there's also a young boy, her Marty's younger brother, Andy, played by an actor named Riley Murphy. And as they're coming to the base, they stop off at a gas station, and a soldier comes up to Marty in the bathroom and tells her, you're not safe. They get you while you sleep.
Mm-hmm. He menaces her with a knife and stuff like this. And, the movie uses that as sort of an opportunity. Initially, because Abel Ferrara is no stranger to exploitation, to play upon some, fears of, sexual menace. And also, there's definitely a race baiting element to that scene as well, because the soldier's black and he's menacing, an innocent white girl.
Mm-hmm.
But I like how the movie reshapes that interaction as it goes on, and is actually one of the more truthful interactions in the movie. It's a real bold way for the movie to open, because after that the movie slows down for quite a bit, and it takes a really, really measured pace, with them arriving on the military base, and you get a lot of perspective stuff with the dad, and he's sort of meeting his, people who are basically going to be his superiors while he's living on the base. You meet the General Platt, who's played by Arlie Ermy. He's sort of the head honcho on the base. You meet a character played by Forrest Whitaker, Major Collins, and you start to get a sense for who could potentially be an ally and who is going to give the scientist dad a hard time. One of his jobs on the base as this sort of like, I don't know, government scientist is to take water samples and see if there's like chemical runoff that could be affecting the base. So there's a little bit of like environmental anxiety introduced in the movie, but it ultimately is like not about that at all. I thought for a second, I was like, is this where they're going with this?
Well, I think that ties more because in that same scene is when we're introduced to Forrest Whitaker's character, Major Collins, and he is asking the dad, whose name is Steve, asking him if there could be anything chemically that would be affecting people and their soldiers. And he's like, I can't remember exactly what Collins's role is on the base, but he has apparently been overseeing people who are reporting to him saying that they're having extreme paranoia. They're saying that people that they knew aren't themselves anymore.
Mm-hmm. They don't want to go to sleep and all this sort of stuff.
Yes. And his implication, it's like, could it be something chemical? Considering the time this was made, this could be a comment about Gulf War syndrome, which was, the idea that there were certain chemicals that were used during warfare that affected the returning soldiers.
Sure. I highly doubt it's that specific. It seems more to me like 90s environmental anxieties.
Potentially. We're going to get into this about Body Snatchers, but suffice to say, like, as far as the filmmaking is concerned, in terms of the script and the way the story is being dealt out, I guess we should say, because this is going to come through when we talk about Puppet Masters as well, that the script for Body Snatchers has kind of a very notable genre alum attached to it, including people like Stuart Gordon and Dennis Paoli, who are famously partners that did a lot of the Lovecraft movies like Reanimator and From Beyond. And Larry Cohen's name is on this.
Yeah, it's a big and kind of confusing bunch of writers credits. You had Raymond Sisteri and Larry Cohen, and then you have Stuart Gordon and Dennis Paoli credited as a team because there's an ampersand between their names, and then there's this guy Nicholas St. John. And so when you have that many credits on something that's that's a screenplay, it's highly doubtful you're not seeing everybody's name who worked on the screenplay. I can guarantee if Ferrara would have contributed to the screenplay as well. And then you had a similar thing going on with Puppet Masters, where the credited people were Ted Elliott and Terry Rossio, who are the famed writers of the Pirates of the Caribbean, the first 3 Pirates of the Caribbean movies. And then you have David Goyer coming on to do another rewrite after them. But like, evidently a whole shitload of people worked on that movie. Those are just the ones who got credit.
Any production of a certain size after a point is going to have uncredited writing on it.
Sure.
That's something we've been very good about on the show, to like telling people, it's like, look, the names that you see are not all the names that actually contributed to this. They're just the ones getting the credit.
Right.
But I think it's important in particularly discussing Body Snatchers, because Stuart Gordon at some point was attached to direct this version, and for whatever reason that fell through, and Abel Ferrara came on. And Ferrara's approach to mood and tone are so unique, and I think it gives Body Snatchers such a distinct flavor. And obviously this is all supported by very not just competent but sometimes extraordinary filmmaking, but I really think it's his particular contribution to mood that turns Body Snatchers into something that is genuinely filled with dread and menace, and kind of, there is a defeatism to Body Snatchers that I know there is a cynical streak that runs through Stuart Gordon's kind of stuff.
Yeah, but not like Ferrara. I mean, Stuart Gordon at least has like a really strong sense of wacky humor. Even movies like Reanimator, which have some really gross stuff in them. But I mean, you look at this, you look at the kind of filmography that Stuart Gordon has, and it's full of really wacky shit. Space Truckers and Robot Jocks and From Beyond and Reanimator, like all those movies are, they have a really distinct sense of humor about them. Even his Masters of Horror episodes as well. But Ferrara has a really different idea about how, a screenplay should play out on screen. Obviously, he's
a far more bleak person in regards to how he executes his art. And that is certain, I'm not trying to say like Body Snatchers is a capital B bummer of a time, but it is a bleak movie. And especially this particular version of the story is such a fascinating one to me because of the target of the allegory for the Body Snatchers. Because in this one, the invasion has happened before the movie has even started.
Right. And that's an extraordinarily pessimistic take on this. And, you know, one of the crucial things when you're telling an invasion of the body snatcher story is choosing whose perspective are you going to tell the story from. And in this one, it is mostly told through the perspective of Gabrielle Anwar's character, Marty. So you have this young teenager, and, you know, part of the reason that this particular perspective works so well is the same reason it works so well on, say, Nightmare on Elm Street and things like that. It's not just that she's vulnerable. It's that her perspective is devalued, essentially. And so her sort of rebelliousness and her, desire to not be conformist, you know, as a teenager is something that informs the whole movie's attitude.
Right.
You know, obviously the contradiction with teenagers is they all don't want to conform, but they also want to belong to a peer group or multiple peer groups. So there's sort of a conflicting thing there. They do want to conform. They just don't know how.
Well, we see that because the Arlie Ermey's character, General Platt, his daughter, Jen, played by Christine Elise, who most people will probably know from Child's Play 2, she is this kind of, you know, punk-looking rebel girl that immediately befriends Marty and is taking her out to, you know, the local bar where everybody hangs out. And, of course, Marty has to meet up with this guy, Tim, played by Billy Wirth. And I immediately thought he was snatched from the get-go, and maybe that's just that actor's performance, or it was possibly that he was directed that way to make us think he might have been.
He's wooden in a very hunky way. He's way better than the hunk in the Puppet Masters.
Oh, we'll get to that. Don't you worry. But there is a phenomenal reverse shot scene between Tim and Marty in which they're getting to know each other, and they're playing, you know, Never Have I Ever, basically, a version of that. And it is just these looking straight into the camera, full on close up.
Very tight close up. And the close ups are especially tight because this movie's in scope. Shot and lit by the wonderful Bojan Bazelli.
Yes.
So the mood that's established when these two characters are looking right into each other's eyes and speaking, and we're doing this shot reverse, this 180 shot reverse, like right on their faces, it's supposed to have this uncomfortable, overly personal feeling, but the effect that it has, like, is really genuine. Like, we actually feel like we get to know the characters in that moment. It's like a no bullshit kind of moment because the characters are looking right down the barrel of the camera, and you're like, I feel like these characters are telling the truth.
Well, and they're playing a game whose structure is supposed to be about revealing truths about yourself.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful marriage of writing and filmmaking in terms of what it is trying to evoke in the viewer. It will probably seem super simple to most people, but both Travis and I at the same time were like, this is great.
It truly is. And the lighting for each of their close-ups is specifically configured in such a way to be beautiful. It's not a naturalistic lighting. I mean, it's a night exterior scene, so it has to be lit artificially anyway. But the way that their beauty is handled in the lighting between their close-ups is just like astonishing work. I fucking loved it. This movie's great at this kind of technical stuff.
I mean, there's so much. We could spend the whole episode just talking about how this movie is photographed because it's gorgeous. As the movie progresses and we learn more about, you know, the body snatching going on and people being replaced, we see more and more people's shadows, extreme shadow work, or people are completely turned into silhouettes in certain scenes.
It's a lot of silhouettes, and the camera is specifically drawing your eye to them in the composition. There's a scene early on where the scientist dad character is meeting Forrest Whitaker's character for the first time, and there's a whole bunch of soldiers sort of like standing and watching, you know, this sampling of the local water happen, and the sun is behind them. And what's odd is, you know, the sun wouldn't necessarily cast silhouettes like that on like the opposite riverbank, but the lighting was configured in such a way where they had like really, really strong silhouettes cast of the army men standing behind the dad character. And it's not a choice that the movie wants you to not pay attention to. It is really clearly drawing your eye because the movie is shot in scope and it's really wide. It will sometimes place the speaking character on the extreme far side of a frame. And so something else is in the center of the frame. So it's playing with where it wants you to look in the frame really, really hard.
Well, and also, I mean, in that particular instance with things being on far sides of the frame, that makes them feel alien to us because
it's uncomfortable.
Yes, because we're used to things that we're supposed to pay attention to being the center of our vision in a movie image. So when you have characters who are on the extreme sides of frames, or like these shadow silhouettes that you're talking about are on the extreme right of the frame, it immediately makes them feel like intruding images.
Or sometimes somebody's silhouette will be in the center of the frame while they're on the extreme left to right.
Yeah, so I mean, it's wonderful, wonderful stuff. Also, beyond the filmmaking, I think there is great performance work being done here. In particular, I have to highlight it. Meg Tilly as the stepmother, she is the first person that we actually see how the replacing happens.
Yeah, she gets snatched, and boy, that gag that where they have like the false head and then they pull a vacuum in it and the head just crumples inward is an awesome gag. But what makes that scene way better and way more frightening is perspective. You know, the movie handles perspective so well, and their sense of perspective in that comes from the young kid, Andy. He sees it directly. I mean, it's like a couple feet away from him. And so it makes that moment like way more horrifying to know that he's the one seeing it.
Well, especially because in that same shot we have in the foreground is that effect happening. Then we cut and we see Andy look, and in that same setup, in the closet, out of the darkness, the pure blackness, comes the stepmother, the replacement, totally nude. And it's like, oh my God, this is so frightening. And granted, that is a moment that is in other versions of Body Snatchers, that seeing of the corpse decay and everything, and then seeing, so here's the replacement. But like you're saying, it's all about perspective in this one, and having that kid's perspective, and Andy being the one who is the first one to really get a sense of like, no, like he after he sees that, he keeps telling his dad like, my mom is dead, which is chilling. Also earlier, there's a scene where he's going to the daycare and all of the students paint the exact same kind of weird, abstract, fleshy looking image.
Right. It'd be weird if they all drew the same like house, but the fact that it's an abstract image makes it even stranger. Mm-hmm. And they're all holding it up in the same exact way, and that they get an incredible reaction shot on Andy looking very, very self-conscious. I don't know what they did in that moment to get him to react that way. He's a very young actor, but he does great work.
Yeah, he has fantastic reaction shots throughout the movie. I mean,
it's just... yeah. There's one shot of him in the movie that's really bad, but it's not his fault.
No, it's not his fault at all. I do also want to say, just so you know, in case we miss it, compliments to Abel Ferrara's oftentimes collaborator on his scores, Joe Delia. The score for this movie kills.
Yeah, no, it's real good. Actually, the score for Puppet Masters is pretty good too, but you know, we'll get there in a bit.
We'll get there, but more so, I wanted to highlight Meg Tilly again because she has what I would describe as the centerpiece kind of acting moment of the movie after things are really starting to fall apart. And we are, like, us as the audience have been tapped into like, okay, body snatching is going on. We know that from the title.
Yeah.
The movie has been very deliberate and slow about how our characters are kind of coming to this information, even though we already know it.
But it really breaks when the dad finds out factually that, like, okay, my wife has been replaced. And the dad takes the kids and decides to leave the house and escape and go somewhere else that's safe. And Meg Tilly has this incredibly chilling, awesome, stunning moment where she's like, where are you going to go?
Yeah, she's like, this is part of a bigger thing that's happening. This is happening everywhere. Where are you going to go? There's like, you can't go anywhere because there's no one like you left. Oh, I'm getting goosebumps like just talking about it.
Yeah, same. It's so awesome. And then when they finally leave and they run out the door, she does the trademark, Body Snatchers scream, and the sound design in that scream is just awesome. And it just goes off like a fucking siren, and the whole neighborhood comes alive, and everybody starts chasing him. It's like, this fucking rocks.
It's so good. And I mean, but the way that's revealed is beforehand. There's an earlier scene in which Meg Tilly and the dad character, Steve, are having kind of like bedroom time, and they have this weird sense of play where they're like tickling each other, and we were like, yeah, that's kind of weird and distinct, but it's set up because later, after she's been snatched, we see her and she's like going to give him a massage.
Yeah.
And there's all these intense close-ups on her rubbing his skin, and it looks so alien and disturbing.
Yeah, it's the closeness of it that makes it really grotesque. But like, that's also intercut with another fantastic scene where you get Marty in the bathtub like Nancy in Nightmare. Mm-hmm. And the tentacles from the alien egg work their way up her chest and neck and up around her neck and her head and into her mouth. And I think it's an incredible gag. I think it's a reverse gag where the tentacles were pulled away from their final spots and the film was just ran in reverse.
Well, this is all like the pod is up in the ceiling, like grate above her.
Yeah.
And so these tentacles are coming down and it's getting into her nose and orifices. And then we're cutting back to these shots inside the pod, seeing her replacement start to develop. And the same thing is also happening with the dad at the same time. He's getting snatched.
Funny, they did an episode of Buffy that does this exact same gag.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I don't remember that.
In the first season, it's called Bad Eggs.
And this moment in which both of them, the dad and the daughter, eventually wake up during their snatching, and their replacements wake up too, and they're not, completed. Marty's falls down from the ceiling into the bathrobe, which is just fucking awesome.
Yeah, they do this gag a whole bunch of times in the movie where the person has to confront their doppelganger that's like not fully formed.
Yes.
They play with that like borderline of the person is almost gone and then they get woken up and their new, alien doppelganger is right there next to them, and it's really freaky.
And so yeah, I mean, so then we kind of have everything's disintegrating, the invasion is going as planned, everybody's getting replaced, and this is all coming from the military, which is where the big allegory comes in, where it's like, okay, the military would be kind of the perfect incursion for an invasion to start with body snatching, because they have to, through the system of being a soldier, they have to be kind of, pod people already, because they have to act upon very direct orders without thinking,
it has to. It's a collective, is what we're saying.
Yes.
It's a collective society in the military, and that mirrors the alien collective hive mind. It was also really brilliant screenwriting. Whoever came up with the military base idea is a really, really smart idea, in that, we don't see this breaking out in the cities. So I think it's a really smart idea to think of like, okay, well, if a person, were to have this sort of breakout in the cities, like where would be a really safe place to go? Oh, we could go to a military base, right? We'd be safe there, right? It's kind of like what happens at the end of 28 Days Later. They get to a military, what's been set up as a military base, and we think, okay, the characters are safe. And I love that idea here of like, okay, we have these people who are going to a safe place where they're going to be protected by the U.S. Armed Forces. Fuck no, the invasion has already begun, my friend, and it's right fucking there.
Yeah, well, I think just from a creative storytelling standpoint, I think that's great. But as allegory, it's an allegory that is so unique for the Body Snatchers franchise. And because, like you say, like seeing it happen in big cities, we see that in the 78 version, and that's kind of my least favorite point in that movie, where there's, like dogs running around with human faces and shit.
That's one of the more memorable moments of that movie. I mean, it's
weird, but it's like, okay, what's going on? Anyways, not to get off on.
There's a lot of like chaos of like running around in the streets and that kind of stuff is like anybody can shoot that, but it's not the most fascinating shit that's happened in the movie. But the sort of running around and the action beats that are handled in Body Snatchers are actually maybe handled better. I think this is like really technically outstanding.
Well, and it keeps the tension like all throughout the movie, because there's a point where Steve is, got Marty and Andy, and I think Tim's with them, and he's like, okay, don't worry, we're going to get out of here. I know we can fool them. We just have to act like we don't have emotion. And Marty immediately picks up like, no, he's not my dad. He's been replaced. And in this moment, I was like, has he? Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know. And not knowing was so exciting, because they shoot him, and I was like, did they just kill her dad? And it turns out that, yes, he was a replacement. But I was literally like, I don't know. Like, I don't know right now, and this is really good tension.
Yeah, it felt like the movie was really a big couple steps ahead of us at every turn. I mean, they do a fantastic job. I remember watching Kevin Smith's Red State. And Red State was basically a storytelling exercise for Smith in unpredictability. He wanted the story to take an unexpected turn at pretty much every plot point to create an unpredictable movie. But like the whole reason he wrote that flick. Mm-hmm. So that flick felt kind of random and like it was specifically trying to zigzag away from the audience, whereas this one feels much more confident in its storytelling and its plotting of beats. The ending of this movie is horribly bleak. Also because they have to take the little kid who's been snatched and throw him from the helicopter. And the shot of him plummeting away from the helicopter is like somebody trying to recreate the shot of Alan Rickman falling from the top of Nakatomi Plaza at the end of Die Hard, except it's done against a green screen and it's a kid. And so he's just like, ah!
Well, he's pointing at them doing the body snatcher scream while he falls. It is the one shot in the movie which I'm like, I wish I could like Lucas that.
Right. And they didn't photograph him actually falling. He's just composited against a background and gets smaller.
Yes, it is unfortunate, especially towards the end. But the ending of this movie reminds me of the ending of Lord of the Flies, the book, because this ending has them saying, there's voiceover from Marty saying like, yeah, like we attacked all the body snatchers. We see this montage it's really dreamlike and disturbing of all the replacements being, shot at with missiles and burning up and melting and all this stuff. And then the ending is they're like, okay, they're going to show up at this army base. And we just see this one guy, with the little directional sticks, for the landing, like telling this. And then we hear a warped version of Meg Tilly's monologue saying like, where are you going to go again? And it's this idea of like, well, maybe they wiped out the body snatchers, but maybe not. But even if they did, I think about the ending of Lord of the Flies, where it's like, yeah, the people that come to save the kids in that are soldiers on a warship.
Yeah.
And it's like,
nuclear war has already broken out at the beginning of the book. So,
right. And so it's like, yes, you're being saved, but who are you really putting your security and your faith into at the end? It's nihilistic and extremely cynical, but god damn it, is Body Snatchers great at executing that.
Yeah, you and I had a blast with this movie. We've gone on enough about it for now. We need to talk about The Puppet Masters, which came out the very next year.
Well, it should be said that Body Snatchers was kind of dumped by its own studio and didn't hit the U.S. until 94. So as far as U.S. release, these did both come out in the same year.
It is dumped in February too. Wow.
Yes. But The Puppet Masters is a very different scenario because this is by Hollywood Pictures, which is actually Disney.
Yeah.
Yes. And this is so like, we did this because we were like, oh, this is like the era of the X-Files. And this is probably, studios trying to make their own X-Files thing. Instead, I think Body Snatcher stands very much on its own. Like, it's nothing like the X-Files, whereas The Puppet Masters is so blatantly trying to be Disney's The X-Files.
Oh my God. It starts off with your cold open, like so X-Files, and it's introducing us to this rural town somewhere in Iowa. You get these kids, and there's, a story of a UFO crash, and then shortly after that wraps up, we get this introduction of all these government agents that are going to serve as our protagonists for the film. It's really hard to say that there's a single lead in, the first. It's kind of a 4-act movie. The first 3 acts of the movie, it's like, who the fuck is the lead in this thing? It's really strange.
Yeah, there isn't really a typical protagonist because the nature of this, where instead of pods that, in case you don't know the Puppet Masters, like, instead of pods that replace you, there are these little alien kind of like manta ray looking things that attach onto the back of your neck and then take you over. And all of these manta ray alien things are all part of a collective hive mind.
Yeah. So our federal agents, it's Donald Sutherland, some guy named Eric Thal, Julie Warner, who you'll recognize from a whole bunch of different stuff. She was the thing I recognized her most readily in, because the thing I saw her first, I think, was Nip Tuck. She was in season 1 or 2 of Nip Tuck.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
One of the characters has an affair with her. But let's see. Richard Belzer is one of them. He's like the driver character for these people. Keith David is in it. You don't meet him till later. Will Patton's in this motherfucker. There's a who's who of like that guy actors in this movie. It's pretty fun cast.
It's got great character actors. Marshall Bell, like tons of people that you'll recognize. But when I went in, when we were talking about choosing the movies for this, I was like, yeah, I think The Puppet Masters, that clearly seems like Disney trying to take advantage of the X-Files fervor and do their own thing and have this adaptation that was probably in development, even before the X-Files became a big hit, and this is what got it, off the ground. But upon watching it, I cannot believe how structurally, how in tone, and how in performance,
in costuming and cinematography and score,
everything.
Like this first act where these federal agents arrive in this Iowa town to investigate a UFO landing, their costumes are fucking straight out of X-Files. Every time there's a scene transition, the score sounds just like Mark Snow, which is odd because in other sections of the movie, it almost sounds like there was an entirely different orchestral composer. And it's not a bad score.
No.
Like the opening credits, like that's a good music cue. So the production value of this is, it's considerably more than X-Files. Like it looks good.
It's considerably more than Body Snatchers, and this looks worse than Body Snatchers. Like
it does. And also in scope.
It is also. I mean, we had 2 movies in scope this week, and it's not. I'm not saying it's a bad looking movie, but it is very clear that it is taking this source material and trying to make the most Hollywood version of it can.
I mean, it's not like Michael Bay hypergloss, but there's elements of that sort of standard summer action movie appeal that the movie is trying to incorporate into nearly every scene. Also, the X-Files was extraordinarily popular, so they were clearly trying to ape that. It is just obvious. Even if they, weren't consciously trying to do it in the making of this movie, it's beyond obvious.
It's impossible for me to look at the movie and not see it as a clear X-File ripoff.
Yeah, I mean, even Julie Warner's character is clearly scullying in some scenes. Eric Thal's character's got a bit of a different thing going on. I mean, he has some sort of like David Duchovny energy later, but most of Eric Thal's arc as the character Sam is about his interactions with his dad, played by Donald Sutherland.
Which we have to say, casting Donald Sutherland in this movie is a clear bit of meta understanding, being that he is so popularly associated with the Philip Kaufman version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Obviously, yeah.
So it's so, I mean, if you look at it even marketing wise, like Donald Sutherland, and this is obviously part of, his agent got him a good deal. He is top billed. He is, on the poster, the video box and everything. It is just his big fucking head. Like this
sure.
is they want it to be like, hey, Donald Sutherland in an alien invasion movie. You'll like that, right? You liked it, 20 years ago or whatever.
You've got Keith David, who is in The Thing, which is another Body Snatchers kind of riff.
Yep, absolutely. So the casting is very good, and I think performance wise, the majority of people are doing fine. Like Eric Thal is kind of the only weak link, but I don't totally fault him, because after a point, the movie is, as you called it, on plot autopilot with characters and everything.
Totally.
And that's unfortunate. I mean, the one thing that both Travis and I had to bring up about Eric Thal's performance is, I don't know if he was directed to do this or this was his choice, but there are so many scenes where he is just slack-jawed.
Yeah, his mouth is just hanging open. Motherfucker's just catching flies.
At first, I thought it's like, well, maybe it's because at some point he does get puppet mastered, and he is going around infecting other people with the manta rays. And I was like, oh, maybe this is kind of like the Body Snatchers thing, like mouth open, like, oh, I look weird and alien. But he does it when he's not body snatched. Like,
yeah. So. No, it's strange. And then, unlike the slow burn of Abel Ferrara's Body Snatchers, this is a big Hollywood movie, and so it wants to pop off immediately. And the way it does so is nothing short of hilarious. So these federal agents go to this like podunk town, and sure enough, they find an alien on some dude. They manage to like knock him down and take the alien off of him. And in a bizarre moment of action, like they think quickly to kill the alien by ripping the power cord out of a lamp and electrocuting it, but not before like knocking it around the room like a goddamn toy and it like swinging from the ceiling fan. It is ludicrous.
Oh, it's absolutely chuckle inducing, but I do want to give credit where credit is due. The effects work done on these aliens is cool.
It is. I mean, they're about the size of like a big bat, I guess you could say, and they look like a little stingray. They have this tentacle that shoots out of what would be their mouth, and sometimes that tentacle is assisted by CG, but it always looks good. I wouldn't want it on me. They're kind of gross. They leave a big hickey on you when they fall off. I mean, ugh. So after they deal with this one alien, they go outside to find that the entire small town has then turned against them. And so they're trying to drive out of this small town, and they're just like blowing through every fruit stand on the way.
Yeah, I mean, it is that.
funny.
I mean, and understand, this is like 11 minutes into the movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This is that quickly, and people are. But what's great is like some guy like jumps on the side of their car and the window's open, and Donald Sutherland's character always has this cane, and he's hitting the guy, and he's just like, get off
my car. Yeah.
Like he literally says
Shoo.
that. But then the double down of that scene is that one of the kids that we saw originally shows up, and they plow into this kid who launches,
flies through the windshield and is like grabbing onto them. It's insanity.
It's so like we were like, oh man, we picked the exact tonal opposite of Body Snatchers, which was this very kind of subdued, moody, thoughtful, horror sci-fi thing. This is big, dumb, popcorn stupid. And honestly, when it commits to that, The Puppet Masters is pretty darn enjoyable.
It is, but in a distinctly dumb popcorn way. And it's there's certain things that are really strange and idiosyncratic about this. Like, this team of federal agents has evidently been sort of waiting for this moment, and their reaction to finding out that there are alien monsters is so ho-hum. They're just like, oh, yeah, I guess that's first contact. And I was like, wait, this is the first alien they're dealing with, and they're not like losing their shit?
Oh no, yeah, it's because again, I told you, it's like that's that X-Files influence. Like, no, we have to have our government characters be cool and collected and these things. And if we're going to talk about metaphor and allegory, we had kind of a problem last week with Extro, in that we kind of came around to like, I don't think Extro's saying anything. Like, and that's not a bad thing. It's executing what it wants to be extremely well.
It's telling its own unique story.
And I think one of the reasons Body Snatchers as a story has been so, easy and malleable to remake so many times is because it's so smart at keeping the vagueness of its metaphor present in the best versions of the story. And that's why you can have very, very different reads on that kind of idea. Whereas Heinlein's take on it, essentially the exact same idea. Like it's a ripoff. I don't know which one came first. He might have done it first. So, somebody can call me out on that. But his idea of like, yes, aliens literally taking over people and becoming part of this collective mind.
I think Who Goes There would have come first. John W. Campbell.
That would have been first. So, even they were ripping it off. So, but Heinlein is playing it completely straight as far as it seems like the text. Like he is saying it's like, this is about communist infiltration and the Red Scare and all this kind of stuff. And here's the thing. Maybe that was effective in the 50s when it was written, but updating that to a movie in 1994 after the Soviet Union has collapsed, it kind of reads as totally empty in the film.
Right. There's nothing in the movie that feels like Cold War tension. It's just strictly about its premise. It's just about alien invaders and the U.S. government saving it. And like, what's so odd is that for most of the movie, our federal agent protagonists are not in the conflict directly. They are squirreled away in some building that I think was shot in like fucking Fresno. Mm-hmm. And they're just hanging out in this building, and every once in a while there will be like some immediate alien emergency in the room with them. Like they'll discover like, oh, so and so suddenly has an alien on them, or they'll have to develop like their like thing blood test in this movie, like whether or not you can tell somebody is alien is like you have to make them take their shirt off. Like the character played by Eric Thal, like he is always in some sort of like state of undress in the film. He's always like half naked.
Yeah, because of course, because you got to see if the alien's on him, right?
This movie's got tits on its mind. His tits,
man tits,
especially.
Lots of man tits in this movie.
But also Donald Sutherland's like pointing at women and like, take your shirt off, let me see.
Yeah, that
it's so weird. And like Julie Warner's character in the opening of the movie, she's like, what's weird about these townies? None of them looked at my shirt.
Yes, that is a moment where she's like, I expect it. She does it very Scully, cold scientist calculating, where she's like, I expect a certain reaction from a man, when these teenage boys didn't even try to look down my blouse. Oh, they're not being pigs. they must be aliens.
Yeah.
Which is like, Jesus. There's also like they try to manufacture a romance between her and Eric Thal. It is dead on arrival.
Oh, awful.
Yes, because after Eric Thal gets an alien on his back, and he actually gets captured, and there is an interesting scene in which they are able to. Donald Sutherland is talking to him. He's also the character's father, and is communicating with the alien, and the alien is speaking, and they're giving it electroshocks when it doesn't cooperate. And so after this, there is basically a kind of withdrawal period that the host goes through.
Well, they explain that the aliens are basically 60% brain tissue. So having one of these aliens jacking into your brain is like suddenly your brain getting much, much, much bigger. And so those chemicals and those sort of electrical impulses, you get kind of addicted to it. And then when you go through withdrawal, you're absolutely miserable. Like Richard Belzer's character gets, his withdrawal is so bad that when he's in the hospital bed recovering from being an alien, he takes the bag off his IV, he squirts all the liquid out of his IV bag, inflates it, and then swooshes all the air from his IV bag into his line, and so he dies from an embolism.
Oh, just horrible way to die. Like, horrible. Yeah. But then Eric Thal, eventually Julie Warder comes across him in the shower, because another reason for him to be now totally naked. And he's like having this weird regression to being a boy. He's like, I'm sorry, daddy. And she has to go and comfort him. And you said to me that you were like, oh, this is how the movie's going to manufacture romance. And we were both like, yucko.
It is the unsexiest thing. Like, he's fully nude, by the way. And, it should, in a moment like this where they're trying to make a romance happen with a fully nude person in there, it's like, well, okay, the movie could at least try to be sexy. Nope.
Doesn't even need to be, that scene doesn't need to be sexy. It needs to convey vulnerability. That's the whole point, is that their romance is going to be built upon vulnerability. But between the performance and how the characters have been used up to that point, and then the kissing that randomly happens in the middle of that scene, which is just like so awful.
It's gross. It's so gross. And at this point, like we said, like the movie's on plot autopilot. Like they're squirreled away in their like government mansion thing, and the disaster is sort of like all happening elsewhere. And we occasionally see conversations with like the military when they're trying to manage it. Of course, the military stooges get taken over and yada yada yada.
After a point, it just feels like a succession of stock scenes that you've seen. Like, yep, we're going to look at a chart and see like, well, how big's the invasion going to be in 24 hours? Like, it's that kind of stuff. And you're like, I know exactly how this movie is going to play out. Like, there are no surprises for me. And while things are like we should say it is a competently made movie in terms of filmmaking. The structure is trying to be familiar and all appealing. And it's certainly, I can't say it's not succeeding at that, but the problem is by doing that, it is sacrificing anything that makes itself interesting or potentially weird with its premise.
Yeah, and the movie doesn't have nothing on its mind. I mean, it throws stuff out there that's meant to be sort of edgy and controversial, like Donald Sutherland's character says to his boardroom of like, government officials, like, oh, they're not children anymore. Once they're infected, they are the enemy. So you got to mow them down. And so, of course, it kind of trades in this sort of stock edginess of like, oh, how do we deal with the value of human life?
Well, since this, coming from Heinlein, and I believe that, this is attempting to be faithful to, if not the text, at least the spirit of it, it comes across as this whole in direct opposition to Ferrara's Body Snatchers, in that this has total faith in the government and the military. They are capital H heroes in this movie.
Sure. And they're heroes who have to make tough decisions. The military obviously is portrayed as vulnerable, but they're not the intellectuals in control. They're not the agents, the men in black that sort of run this movie. Mm-hmm. And, they're kind of like, I don't know, pan capable. They're like, they can all like fly a helicopter, like,
right,
drive an armored car, whatever. It's just, it's all so vague. Like they're all commandos.
Well, Travis, Donald Sutherland didn't know how to fly a helicopter at first.
Now he can fly a helicopter.
Well, this is the thing. Like you talked about this having a 4-act structure. Eventually, they find the big alien hive mind mushroom thing. It is, for a Disney production that was attempting to be a wide release, it is a pretty cheap looking effect.
It is. It's basically a giant jellyfish mushroom with all these tendrils hanging down and a whole bunch of people standing in a crowd. It is trying so hard to be creepy, but looks so goofy.
I feel bad saying that because obviously, like this is all, set work and they did a whole bunch of stuff, but if it's just in the way it's shot or the way it's executed, it looks way cheaper than it should. And in doing so, made us kind of laugh, where it's like, this is goofy, like this is a Disney movie? Holy shit.
Yeah, the alien hive is one of the least impressive pieces of production value in the film.
Which sucks because there's cool effect. Like, I love, and they do it multiple times, where to transport more of the aliens, one of the hosts who's been taken over will have a bunch of them like just stuck on their chest.
Yeah, that's a creepy and gross effect every time they do it.
Yeah, it's great. But so it's like, okay, now we just gotta blow up the hive mind because they're all one collective unit, and if we kill that, then we kill all of them.
Well, I kept thinking, like, trying to predict like where they were going to go, because one of the things they push really heavily early on in the film was like the aliens understand like electrical impulses and electrical frequencies,
right? And
I thought, well, okay, what are they going to do? Are they going to play the Indian Love Call or whatever it was, the Slim Whitman song from Mars Attacks, and they're all going to explode? Turns out they do have sort of an equivalent, and it's a War of the Worlds ripoff. Instead of like blowing up the queen and then they all die, instead, because it's a hive mind, they all won. They just give one of the monsters encephalitis, and they all die.
No, it's not one of them. They say, we don't see this. They only say it. They're like, oh, well, what we have to do is spread, and because there's 60% brain mass, if we give them encephalitis, it's something that we can cure as humans, but will kill the alien host.
Right.
So we're gonna give that to mosquitoes and distribute them over this area in Iowa where this invasion's taking place. We never see that happen. They just say that that's how they're going to solve the problem.
Now, in the more direct, maybe dumber version of this movie, it would have taken like the approach of I keep wanting to call it the wrong title because they never decided on one. Edge of Tomorrow.
Oh, yes.
Where they head to like the one hive mind queen location and they blow up the queen alien, and that solves the movie problem. I thought, like, in the way dumber version of this, they would have had to drop an encephalitis bomb on the big mushroom queen.
Yes, it doesn't get to that, and I'm sure that's a carryover from the novel, the way that because that sounds like a very, writerly way to solve a problem.
Yeah.
But then there is this kind of denouement, or the end of the fourth act, really, where it turns out, oh, there was one alien left, and it hooked itself onto Donald Sutherland, because as a big Hollywood movie, we have to end on a big Hollywood action scene, which includes him stealing a helicopter and flying it.
Well, there has to be something resembling like character drama that is meaningful to the people that we've been watching a whole bunch. And so they play up the daddy issues that have been sort of going on throughout the rest of them. And Donald Sutherland steals a helicopter. His son character, the guy who can't close his mouth evidently, runs after the helicopter, grabs onto it, and is like hanging from it like Jackie Chan at the end of Super Cop. He manages to climb up into the flying helicopter and has a confrontation with his own dad over the controls of a helicopter. And Donald Sutherland turns around and looks at his son, and he says, I can fly a helicopter.
Well, and because he knows they're going to fist fight, he has to turn on autopilot.
He puts on the strangest voice. He doesn't even say autopilot. He goes automatic pilot.
Yes, that's automatic pilot.
Automatic pilot.
Now I do want to, because I want to give credit where credit's due with this movie again. There's some great stunt work in this movie. Earlier during that whole crashing, with the kid crashing through the car thing, there's like they run somebody, I think, into like a telephone booth that smashes, and it's probably a dummy, but it looks great. And during this helicopter scene, there are real stuntmen fighting off the side of a helicopter. It's awesome.
Yeah, those exteriors where they actually shot a real helicopter flying around, and you see the stunt performers really fighting, and they're like, that's some crazy ass shit. That's cool.
But
the stuff that's inside the helicopter on the set, where you can tell the stuff was composited through green screen, it's like that looks fine.
There's no kid dropping out the side of it, and both of these end with a big helicopter scene too.
Yeah, oddly enough.
But eventually, Eric Thal's character is able to shoot his dad, not mortally wounding him, but enough to take him out of commission, and then they can the death of the final alien is kind of the perfect capper to the movie, in which it is trying to flee the helicopter and gets outside.
I forgot about this.
And accidentally, just gets whipped into the back tail rotor and just splats. It's so good.
So the moral of the story about this movie is it actually, when it's doing dumber things, the movie's way better.
Yes.
When it starts really like venting IQ points out of the side of the movie, like get rid of it all, it's like a way more enjoyable experience. But when it's trying to be like Ursat's X-Files, it's like, I don't care. And when it's trying to like find out who the protagonist of this movie is going to be, and like when it's doing its like dumb alien invasion plotting stuff, it's like I can't vibe with this. Like, yeah, it's technically well made. There's a really brutal fight scene about halfway through where Eric Thal's character fights somebody who's infected in a kitchen. It's like, ooh, this is a really brutal and well choreographed fight scene. So it has its moments, but
yeah, it's very competent. But my main thing, especially after I'm like, having watched it after watching Body Snatchers, my main thing was, I bet if you asked the screenwriters or the people who were working it, that they didn't even consider what the aliens as metaphor were. They were just like, no, this is just an alien invasion story. Like it's, because I talked when we were talking about like Independence Day, where there are definitely critical reads you can make about the aliens in Independence Day. None of them were intended by the people who made the movie. They were just like, no, aliens are just bad aliens. We got to fight them.
Yeah. I said to you, it was like the aliens in Independence Day spoke a language that every summer moviegoer in America knows, and that's the language of explosions. They're just, I'm here to blow shit up, and audiences ate it up.
The idea of the Body Snatchers is so much more insidious and kind of self-reflective, whereas in the film version, at least of the Puppet Masters, it is just, no, this is the enemy and we need to kill it. Like, that is the execution. That is what we understand, which is a very broad and understandable American popular movie type of language to speak. Like, this bad guy.
It's transactional, too. Like,
right.
We understand the transaction that's happening.
It's cowboys and Indians. Like,
sure.
It's that, like, and I'm not, I know that's, people might take that. What I'm saying is, in the context of popular American media, it is that simple of a transaction of like, yes, good guy, bad guy, no allegory or anything intended. It is just fight
difference
the bad
is
guy.
immediately discernible.
So, I mean, we didn't do this as a versus, and I'm very glad we didn't, because it's very obvious. Like, the Body Snatchers wipes the floor with the Puppet Masters, but as a part of it, as part of Alien Invasion Month 2.0, and as part of what I wanted to look at, particularly with these, was what were the paranoias that might have been going on in the 90s. With the Puppet Masters, I don't really walk away with anything other than this weird kind of... It's so interesting for it as an X-Files ripoff, because as much as the X-Files is centered around government agents, that show has an extreme distrust about government systems.
Right. One of the ultimate lessons is trust no one.
Yes.
So the political differences between these two films are like the ultimate like big thing. Other than like Hollywood style execution and then more, I don't know, Body Snatchers is just a more grown up film. Like, it's not the kind of film that's destined to be successful in Hollywood, and they knew that. That's why they dumped it in February.
For sure.
That's why the release was delayed.
I have to mention, if you don't think the Puppet Masters is ripping off the X-Files, they literally use Trust No One on the poster for it.
Indeed.
Like, I can't believe it. But yes, like Body Snatchers, I wish we could post the entire discussion that we had about that movie where we were talking about our different reads, because it got to a point where it's like, this is the most kind of academic approach we've ever had to as far as like an immediate reaction to a movie.
Sure. I believe that it was more of an allegory talking about what Americans fear of collectivist leftist societies. And you thought, well, no, this is actually fear of right-wing fascism being carried out by the American military. And you and I actually agreed on a lot of the different elements that built up our takes on that. But after the original Body Snatchers being a Red Scare story, like really, truly born of the Red Scare, I couldn't help but see like all the different ideas that sort of swirl around, like Forrest Whitaker's character, when he is confronted with the other soldiers, Arlie Ermey's character, and they're trying to convince him to join their fold. He's like, look, we're trying to eliminate conflict. You know, it's for the collective. It's for the good of everybody. And Whitaker's response is, the individual is always important. You know, he says that directly. And so the movie, with its characters like that, you know, has its characters making arguments for individualist thinking, and the value of the individual, and talking about the value of individual liberties, which is a very common talking point in right-wing rhetoric. And the fear that the leftists will come and stamp out individual liberties to favor the collective instead of the individual is a really common thing. So this to me was like the fear of, you know, the communist, collectivist, leftist mindset infecting a structure that we thought we could believe in, which is, you know, the U.S. military as sort of a stand-in for the structure of the United States federally.
Well, yeah, whereas I saw it as one of the most important things about the Ferrara version is, like I said, is that the invasion happens before the movies ever started. The army were always body snatchers in this one. And I said to you that this idea of the pod people invading the army makes perfect sense, because in a way they're just turning the army into being all that they can be. They're kind of the ultimate realization of the army as a collective idea and as a ruling class for American society. And that same moment with Forrest Whitaker's character, in which there's such a harping on about race by Arliss Ermey. He's like, when the race is more important than the individual. I'm like, that is straight out of like fascist language. Like
sure. And this is a movie with race on its mind. It features a lot of black characters.
There are definitely race reads that I would love to hear from black voices and black film critics about this movie, which I've not. Like, I would love to read, because I'm like, there is stuff going on in this that is commenting about race.
This thing is ripe for reappraisal, especially right now.
Deeply. I mean, yeah. Oh, there were moments in both movies that had us both being like, whoa. Like, there was a news report in The Puppet Masters where somebody's saying, like, to avoid, you know, what's going on in Iowa, they're saying, like, you know, stay indoors, avoid crowds and everything. And we were like, ugh.
Yeah.
But
eerie.
Yeah, I mean, same thing with body snatchers. This idea of the people with guns are not looking out for your best interest. The system in place that has the guns, the military, are really working for their own sinister designs.
Yeah, and you know, I think both of our reads on the film are equally valid. And they don't stand in opposition to one another either.
And no, and that's why I said to you that in the same way debates about the original text and the original film's metaphor existed about, is it a genuine thing about communism, or is it a more satirical take and talking about the McCarthyism of the era being this manufacturing of fear of everybody? In the same way that the debate about that exists, so too does our debate about this version. And I think, like you said at the beginning, body snatchers being so vague, it actually is less about there being a definitive read on the text, and it acts more as a mirror to the person who is analyzing it.
Yeah, like I said, it's a Rorschach inkblot of a story.
Yes, which I think Ferrara's version succeeds in that regard, like other successful versions of body snatchers. The Puppet Masters, I mean, I can recommend it as a piece of kind of dumb, silly popcorn entertainment, but that's about it. Whereas Body Snatchers, I'm like, I think this is the total definition of a secret gem.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. If you were looking for other things to recommend, you would definitely head to The Shelf, where you keep all your other movies. Drew, let's do The Shelf. It's time.
All right. Well, for me, I'm going to go real easy. I'm going to pull the original film version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I have a particular love of 50s sci-fi. It's not an era that I grew up with in terms of like ingesting a whole ton of it. And obviously I'm not that old, but I find the paranoias of that time very, very powerful. And also just as a film, the 1956 version is really good. Don Siegel's direction is excellent. The lead performance by Kevin McCarthy is deservedly classic. Infamously, the movie is supposed to end with him screaming directly into the camera, "They're here already, you're next." And that moment in the movie is chilling. Like it's his delivery, the music, the close up on his face is incredible, because that was seen as too pessimistic of an ending. They put on an ending that's a little bit more ambiguous. Like, no, maybe things are going to work out, but maybe not. It's a wonderful film. It's a fun little effects film. I think it's still very potent. And it's one that I don't dislike the 78 version, but if I wanted to watch one before having seen this Abel Ferrara one, I would watch the 1956 one, but maybe it's just because of the freshness for me. But of the three film versions I've seen of the story, I think the Abel Ferrara one is my favorite.
All right. For the shelf pick this week, I'm going to do something really, really fun. This isn't like a super high quality movie, but God damn it, did I have a good time with it. This is The Hidden. And this stars Kyle MacLachlan as an alien bounty hunter in a Kyle MacLachlan suit. And he's hunting down his arch nemesis, which is this alien worm that can act as a parasite and go inside people's bodies. And this alien worm's sole motivation is basically like to be pure id. Like when people have the alien worm inside them, they like get drunk and drive fast, and they like eat a whole bunch of shitty fried food, and they like shoot people. It's just nuts. And the quality of the effects in the movie are not really, really, really high quality. Like whenever they use a fake head in the movie, you're like, oh, that's a very fake head. But the effects of the worm, like, and unfurling its legs and crawling out of mouths and stuff like that, like transferring from one host to another, it's delightful. And not only is this movie wacky in terms of premise and effects and performances, but it takes some really weird choices. There is an exceptionally creepy choice for Kyle MacLachlan's character. It makes the movie, I think, something that is, I think, pretty unique. I would recommend it. I don't know if I would call it a gem, but maybe a cult favorite.
I go there. I enjoy The Hidden quite a lot. Super fun movie. Very kind of a great example of 80s excess in genre filmmaking.
For sure. Yeah. Has a bad score, though. I'll give it that. It has a pretty bad score. I remember not liking the music in it at all. But yeah, totally recommend it aside from that.
Well, we do have to do our listener shelf picks from last week's episode on Extra, and y'all got a lot of them. So let me get through these real quick because, wow, you guys came to bat. I love doing these every week. Thank you so much. Mr. Milksteak had 2 films by David Cronenberg, Shivers and The Brood. Both very good. Stephen Nesbella went with Life Force, which we actually did an episode on of From Dusk Till Dawn versus Life Force. Hobb went with a great shelf pick, Phantasm. We always are looking for reasons to recommend Phantasm.
Boy.
Yes. Eric Johnson had 3 shelf picks, Humanoids of the Deep, Dagon, and The Untamed. I know Travis has seen The Untamed and commented on it on the post at genrevision.com about it, so we can read his thoughts there. JT went with Kramer versus Kramer, which is a great pick. And Eric Fuchs went with Uzumaki, which is the adaptation of the Junji Ito horror manga, which hopefully we'll be getting that new adaptation sometime here in year X. So thank you everybody for the listener shelf picks. I'm so glad that's something that's taken off and we love reading them every week. Let's do some currently consuming.
Nom, 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 nom.
Travis, what's been on your plate?
We're running long, so I'm going to be really, really brief. In year X, we don't get many new releases, but the new releases we get, I'd like to talk about a little bit when we can. This is a brand new release on VOD from IFC. This is called Relic. It's a horror film from Australia, and it is about a mother and daughter that go to the grandmother's house because she is missing. She's been missing for a couple days, and they're there taking care of her home. And then I think 3 days after she goes missing, she shows up again. And that's when things start to get really weird. It's clear that the grandmother has some sort of dementia. She wanders, she forgets things. There's like little post-it notes all around her house that kind of remind her to do basic things like flush the toilet or take this pill and so on and so on. And it's absolutely sad. Like, it knows what to do as far as, you know, amping up the emotion of, dealing with somebody in your family who is elderly and or terminally ill, or has dementia. And the way this progresses is tonally a blend of like what's going on with A24 and its contemporary horrors, like Ari Aster's kind of stuff, Hereditary. But it's also a blend of J-horror influences and also American supernatural horror like Insidious. It's a really tasty blend of all three of those things. It's pretty fucking scary, I thought. And emotionally, very, very well wrought. It's sad. There are some moments and scenes in this movie that's just very sad. The ending is sad, but it also is in service to this grand metaphor about what it's like to take care of a terminally ill person. And what it's like to take care of somebody whose mental faculties are leaving them. It's real fucking good. You can get it now on most VOD platforms. I think I rented it for like $6.99 on Apple TV. Highly recommended, but be aware, it's got some heavy subject matter. Anyway, what's been on your plate?
Also, real quickly, I reviewed the new film that hit Netflix. It's called The Old Guard, starring Charlize Theron. This is based on a comic book by Greg Rucka, who also wrote the screenplay. We'll link to my review if you want to hear some more extended thoughts. The Old Guard is very appropriate to recommend after some of the comments I made about the Puppet Masters, because The Old Guard has a really nifty premise idea in that there is a group, I think it's like basically 4 people of immortals who have kind of created this sort of mercenary outfit for themselves. And the driving force of the story is that a pharmaceutical company has found out about this and wants to capture them to find out what the secret of their immortality is. And at the same time, there is a new immortal who has shown up and is going to become part of their gang. Wonderful kind of, Highlander riff type thing. But unlike Highlander, the Old Guard doesn't want to do the strangest things with its premise or its execution. The reason one of the reasons Highlander is great is that it recognizes the absolute ridiculousness of its premise, and it matches that in the film's filmmaking and structure. The Old Guard doesn't do that. The Old Guard kind of takes the story through very, very familiar beats that you've seen in non-science fiction ideas on this. And that's not to say that the movie isn't competent. It's very well directed by Gina Prince Bythewood. The cast is pretty uniformly excellent. There are great moments, character moments that kind of transcend the premise, which is good. That's something that should happen. But it's very clear that this is trying to be sort of a, hey, if you like superhero / comic book movies and kind of John Wick action stuff, this is more of that for you. So it's kind of a bummer that it's not the best execution of that idea. It of course ends with a potential sequel tease, and the sequel it teases is like, oh, well, I'd rather watch that movie because that sounds like a more interesting area to take this franchise in, and I won't spoil it in case anybody does watch it. But yeah, I think I called it in my review like a Sunday afternoon on TNT type of movie. Like, it's fine. Like, you can watch it and it's digestible, easy to go down. But yeah, can't really recommend this one. It's a bummer because I love Charlize. Like, I'll see pretty much anything she's in. And if this gets her another action franchise, I'm cool with that too, because she's one of our greatest living actresses, and she's also parlayed that into being one of our greatest action heroines. And she's certainly that in this movie. But I wish the movie was a little bit weirder. So yeah, The Old Guard, if you might like it. I didn't. Not really. I kind of liked it. It was okay. I shouldn't say that. It was okay.
I'm sure it's fine.
Yes. But let's wrap things up with our
Comment of the week.
And we kind of have to break a couple rules here, because we had to do multiple comments of the week. Because we got one comment from loyal listener JT, who I can't even mention the comment because he basically just wrote out his entire experience watching Extro. kind of a moment for moment, like, this is what I'm experiencing while I'm watching Extra, including such notes as just, oh, fuck me sideways. Like, just wonderful observations. I highly recommend reading through JT's experience watching Extra. It's very entertaining. And then we also have to highlight Stephen Nespella, because last week, a beautiful moment happened on this show in which, talking about the astronaut's wife and mentioning the director Rand Ravage, Travis came up with Racho Rand Randy Ravage, a character who will now live on in infamy in Genre Vision history. And we broke down and laughed and just had a great time. And Stephen Nespella made a Photoshop version of Rand Ravage's face on Macho Man Randy Savage's body. And it is art. It is absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much, Stephen. That just intensified the hilarity we had at that fun little joke. So thank you. That was just... it was wonderful. I love Racho Rand so much. So thank you guys so much for jumping on board with all these goofy things that we talk about in addition to movies. It's just salt on the meal, just flavors it up, and we absolutely love it. So thank you all so much. We hope you'll be back next week as Alien Invasion 2.0 month continues, where we'll be talking about War of the Worlds, the 1953 version. One I'm very excited to revisit. I've not seen it since I was a kid, and will be, I believe, a first viewing for you, Travis.
That is correct.
So we hope you'll be back for that. We look forward to talking all about it. As always, thank you so much for listening. I'm Drew Deitch.
I'm Travis Newton.
And we'll see you next week.
Right here on Genre Vision.